Hi everyone. So this is a bit of a talk about RFSwarm and how I came to be. Okay, so it's a little quick overview of what we're going to cover. What it is, why I created it, where it is now, and what the future plans are. So RFSwarm is a performance testing tool that uses Robot Framework to generate load on the system under test. I guess most of you know what Robot Framework's already used for normally, but the idea was to basically reduce duplication of effort in developing test cases, because you have performance testers and you have regression testers or functional testers that are all doing test automation, but they're using different tools and different languages. So that was what I was aiming to change. RFSwarm can be integrated with a CI/CD environment, and I'm not sure exactly how many, but maybe 40 or 60% of people using RFSwarm actually do that, and then some people just use it as a standalone application like you would use LoadRunner or NeoLoad or any of the other performance testing tools. So the choice is yours. It's completely written in Python, so that was an intentional decision. It's basically the same installation process as you would install Robot Framework or any of the Robot Framework libraries. So I tried to keep it as similar as Robot Framework as possible. So if you're already using Robot Framework, then using RFSwarm should be quite easy for you. So why did I create RFSwarm? So I've worked for about 15 years as a performance tester, and as I mentioned, I see in every place that I worked, you have these two teams, and everybody's basically taking these manual test cases and they're automating them. But there's no reuse of anything, because the performance test tool might be LoadRunner, in which case you're writing test cases in C, or it might be NeoLoad, in which case you're using Java, what have you. The regression test tool might be UFT or Robot Framework, but there's no compatibility at all. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if the performance testing team and the regression testing team, or the test automation team, could share each other's work and help each other. And it would also be, I thought it would be really great from a career progression point of view, where someone came from manual tester, became an automated tester, and then they could progress on to becoming a performance tester. Or, the other way, they might become from a system administrator and they progress into becoming a performance tester, and then they go, well, this is not really what I want to do, and then they migrate into becoming a regression tester or a test automator. But, that's not really possible in the current world. So that was what I was trying to make available and where I was trying to bring changes in. At first, I started developing my own framework. And I had this framework that I developed in LoadRunner, and so it was written in C, but it ran based on test steps that were defined in Excel. And so you define all the test steps to navigate through the flow of the application in Excel, and then you'd basically pass the Excel spreadsheet into LoadRunner, and LoadRunner would basically run the framework code over the Excel spreadsheet, and it would execute the test case through the application. And I got some really great benefits out of that, where test cases that, we had a particularly awful web application. So it was a web application, but it had dynamic IDs that were generated based on how many screens or how many fields had been loaded in the user's session. So even if you navigated through the application and then you navigate back to the same screen, all the field IDs would be completely different. So it was a really, really horrible application. So using this framework, scripts that used to take 2 or 3 weeks to develop in LoadRunner were now taking 2 or 3 hours. So we were seeing some significant savings. So then my test manager said, can we put this framework into UFT, into our functional test automation tool? And so I did that, and then all the test cases that we had written for our performance testing, we could then take across to the functional test team, and then they could add in some extra validation steps, and we had good functional test cases as well. So then I started looking at, can I make an open source version of this framework? And I started looking around at test tools, and then I found Robot Framework, and I went, actually, Robot Framework's a lot better than my framework. So I dumped my framework and said, I'm not going to develop this anymore. I'll support this Robot Framework, which looks really cool. And I thought, but there's no performance testing for Robot Framework. And so that's why I built RFSwarm. So my goals with building RFSwarm was to, first of all, keep it open source, because open source is awesome. And second of all, I wanted the same scripting language for functional testing and for performance testing. RFSwarm already had this huge wealth of libraries. All these libraries that can do all these different things. You can do SSH, you can talk to MQ series, you can talk to web interfaces, you can do API calls with request library. You can even talk to mainframes directly. There's all these awesome things that RFSwarm can do. So, with most of the other performance testing tools, they have really limited protocols on what they can actually do. So, one of the things that I always wanted with a performance test tool is to actually have access to test a lot more applications, because a lot of the time I would actually go into a customer site and they'd want me to do performance testing, but their application would have these weird protocols that no one knew how to deal with and none of the performance testing tools could do. And so the end result was, well, you've only got one option, it's LoadRunner, and we have to do recording of the direct network sockets, and then we have to figure out and reverse engineer the network protocol. So RFSwarm solves that problem as well, because you can do it in a more sensible way. So then the other goal I had with RFSwarm was reporting. So in the performance testing world, the only tool that really does reporting well was LoadRunner. All the other commercial tools, they kind of have some reporting system, but it's not great. The open source tools, well, the best of them is probably JMeter, but even then, the report's not great. I mean, you can work with it, but it's not great. So reporting was also another goal. So where's RFSwarm at now? Most of the goals that I had are basically achieved. You can write robot framework scripts. You can run hundreds, thousands, as many robots as you want to run. I have a reporting tool. Okay, it's not as awesome as the LoadRunner analysis tool, but it's getting there and it's going to get better. RFSwarm seems to be well received. As you can see, I've got some stats there from some counts of the monthly downloads from PyPy from back in December. I don't know exactly how many people are using RFSwarm. I know that about 1,000. So it has three components. It has the manager, the agent, and the reporting tool. I would expect that the agent's always going to be much higher than the manager, because the manager basically is just the way you plan the test, and it tells all the agents to run the robots. So I look at the manager and I'm going, well, there's about 1,000 downloads a month. But I don't know whether that's 10 people who are using it hundreds of times a month in their CI/CD pipeline, or whether it's whether it's like 800 people who are downloading it once a month. I'm guessing it's somewhere in between, but we don't know exactly. But the fact that it's being downloaded 1,000 times a month gives me some hope that I've actually created something useful. So up until now, everything has been best effort. So I work a full-time job, but I create RFSwarm, and I've just worked on it part-time in my weekends and my after hours when my kids go to bed and what have you. So everything has been best effort up until now. So what are the future plans? One of the things I'd like to do at the moment when you run RFSwarm, you basically type in RFSwarm at the command line, or RFSwarm agent, or RFSwarm reporter, whichever part you want to run. You just type it in on the command line, and that's okay. It's great if you're integrating into your pipelines for your continuous builds. Not so great if you're just trying to use it as a normal desktop application. So I've had some icons designed that you can see up there. So the plan is to, in a future release, actually have the pip install actually install the desktop icons and, desktop shortcuts or start menu shortcuts on Windows, or a .desktop file in Linux, or an entry in the applications folder in a Mac OS. So that's one of the plans I have for the future. One of the other ideas I have is to have SLAs where you can actually define what is a slow transaction, what is an OK transaction, and have even on the even in the manager, it will start highlighting response times and keywords that are running slowly. Another idea is to have in the reporting tool to be able to load in the report from the current test run and also from a previous test run and actually compare the results. At the moment, all of the RFSwarm components are written in English, but there is a plan to, in the future, have multilingual support in it. It's just not there yet. But at the moment, if your keywords are all written in your favourite language, then they will show up in your language in the user interface and in the reporting, and then everything else in the report can be changed into your language. So whilst the application itself is in English, the reports you generate can be in whichever language you choose. And if you want to peek into the test cases for RFSwarm that are all in the GitHub repository, one thing you might notice is that there's a whole bunch of stuff that's written in Thai. And there's a reason for that. I had a bug report where this particular couple of strings particular couple of phrases in Thai caused a crash because I hadn't handled UTF cases properly in a couple of places. So now those particular phrases that I know will cause a crash if the UTF is not handled properly are scattered everywhere through the test cases, so that I make sure I catch if UTF-8 is not completely covered somewhere. So yes, even double byte languages work. So I guess how can you help out with RFSwarm? Well, funding would be a great way. At the moment, it's not funded, but I would love, like Mika, I have a dream. I have a dream that one day I will be able to work full-time on RFSwarm. So if someone could help make that happen, that would be great. That would be awesome. But other ways you can help. As I mentioned, I have some test cases in place. I actually have set up a GitHub actions set up so that whenever I do check-ins into the new code of RFSwarm, I run tests in Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, and I test on all Python versions from 3.7 up to the current version. So I have some test cases, but they're pretty limited. So if I gather most people here can write robot framework test cases. So if you want to, ping me on the GitHub, or ping me on Discord or in Slack, and say I want to help out RFSwarm with writing some test cases, and I can give you some pointers to where things are, and you can help develop some test cases. That would be awesome too. Another way you can help out is documentation. Everybody loves documentation. Well, everybody loves to read good documentation, but nobody likes to write documentation. So I've tried my best to put really good documentation around RFSwarm, and quite a few people have told me that the documentation is good, so that makes me happy. But it could be better, and there are ways it could be improved. You know, simple things, like some of the screenshots. Some of the screenshots are from RFSwarm version 0.8, and I'm up to RFSwarm 1.2. So, you know, just updating screenshots. It's a little thing, but it's something that takes time. So, you know, if someone wants to help out with just maintaining the documentation and helping me keep the documentation up to date, that would be awesome too. And if you're good at writing Python code and you want to help out actually implementing some of the features that have been requested, that would be awesome too. So I guess that's the end of my slide. Any questions?
Thank you, Dave. Questions for Dave? There in the front row.
All right, thank you for the speech. I just wanted to say it's a great tool. I've used it for proof of concept, and I think inevitably we will use it for a client case as well. So my question was, it's a much heavier tool than some of the other performance testing tools like JMeter. Do you have any workarounds if you want to drive a higher load against a web service? I can not do nearly as many threads with RFSwarm as I would like, and it's obviously understandable because Robot Framework is a much...
Yes. So one of the things you can do is you can change libraries. So instead of using a Selenium or browser library, you can switch to request library and get more that way. It's never going to be as performant as the other tools, but then by the same token, you know, 5,000 or 10,000 LoadRunner licenses or NeoLoad licenses buys you quite a lot of hardware. So it's a compromise.
Which company are you from?
Know it.
Know it. So if you use it for client cases, maybe sponsor. Just think about it. Like, I'm just saying, like, win-win. More questions for Dave? There in the back.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Actually, I have two questions to you. First, are you the Dave from the forum?
From the Robot Framework forum?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think my name in the forum is Dave Amies as well, yes.
Yeah, okay. So if you haven't visited the forum yet, and you visit the forum and have any question, you have a 90% chance that Dave is the one who gives the answer. He's basically running the forum. So thank you very, very much.
So, as I mentioned, open source is awesome, okay? So, in creating my tool for RFSwarm, I'm getting the benefit of Robot Framework. So I thought, and Ed's going to love this, you know, I should be a good community member and I should give back to the Robot Framework forum community. How can I give back? And so the first thing that I found that I could give back was by donating some of my time to contribute and help people on the forum. And I'll also say that a lot of new to Robot Framework, people new to the Robot Framework community, their first contact with Robot Framework and other people in the community is actually in the forum. So if you can get in there and be nice and helpful to people, that would be awesome. Because I'm not online all the time.
Perfect example of like being a good community member.
Well,
did you have an
yes,
actual
well-deserved
question?
applause. And I have a technical question
Yes.
to RFSwarm. I assume you have to queue the results or something in any way. And we were thinking in the project recently how we make queuing, if we use some third-party library for queuing test cases or jobs or something. Do you use some kind of queuing in RFSwarm?
Some sort of queuing?
yeah, like you have to send your agents or tasks somewhere
Okay.
and then collect the results.
So when the RFSwarm agent starts up, it creates a listener file on the agent machine. When the manager loads up the scenario, the agent pulls all the files, all the robot framework files, and all the resource files and all the other associated files into a local directory on the agent machine. So when the agent actually runs the robot files, it also uses ---- listener in the listener file. And so what the listener does is it listens for end keyword. And this is one of the new keywords that up before Robot Framework version 7 were only in the listener version 2 interface. So thank you, Pekka, for putting it into into the version 3 interface for LoadRunner 7. So basically what the listener does is it listens for end keyword. It checks the keyword if the keyword is belongs to a library that's been explicitly said don't report keywords from this library, then it ignores it, but otherwise it picks up the keyword, takes documentation string as the name that it's going to report the response time for, or the duration for, grabs the name and the duration, and it sends the message using a REST API back to the manager straight away. So there's no queuing, really. There is a bit of queuing in the manager, as in, so when the REST API calls come in, they get dropped into a queue because the results file in the manager is actually a SQLite file, nice open source file format that anyone can read with any tool they want to read it with. But one of the catches with a SQLite file is that only one process can read or write to the database. So inside the manager there is a queue. It's basically just a Python dictionary. And so all the API calls basically just dump the results into the right queue for writing into the database, and once every was it 100 milliseconds basically, the process that holds the database open, it reads from that queue and basically does a bulk insert into the database. So that's how that works.
I noticed that there's questions in Slido, but we are running out of time, so maybe continue the discussions during the coffee break in the speaker's corner. Let's show some love for Dave. An awesome talk. Thank you. Thank you.